Welcome back to Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial on North Shore 1049. My name is Marc Freedman. I'm President and CEO of Freedman Financial, located in Peabody, Massachusetts, just above Alto Forno Restaurant and right across the street from the North Shore Mall. And guess what I saw this week? I didn't think it was coming. I thought it was not going to happen. But the letters are on the building. Tesla is coming, folks. Remember where the Sears automotive place was? Well, the sign is up. Tesla is coming to the North Shore Mall. That's right. Sign is up, so it's going to happen, I guess. I'm excited. Maybe I'll buy a Tesla. Who knows? Have you driven a Tesla? Have you been in one? If you haven't, a friend of mine had a Tesla. I don't even know what kind. People say, what kind is it? What series is it? Is it the one with the T-tops? Is it one with the... I don't know. It's a Tesla. It's like me driving a BMW. The guy, I think I told you years ago, I was out trying to test drive a car, and someone said, oh, you got to take a look at the BMW. So I went to the BMW dealership, and it was around winter time or so, and the guy says, oh, we got to go into the parking lot. And he says, you really see how this BMW handles really, really well. And so go out there in the parking lot, and he's like, all right, I want you to drive and then slam on the brakes, and we're going to kind of whip around on the ice and all that kind of stuff. Isn't this awesome? Isn't this great? And I turn to the guy and go, it's a car. And it was like I insulted this guy. At the end of the day, it's a car. It's one of the reasons why I won't drive a BMW. Because I think the people that work at the BMW dealerships are the snobbiest, snootiest, most obnoxious people in the world. If you don't buy into the whole BMW thing, and many of you do, and that's great, but I just think it is so freaking arrogant that I just refuse to buy a BMW. My own opinion, I'm sure they're great cars, but at the end of the day, it's a car. So, the Tesla. I was just talking about the Tesla. So, there was a couple cool things that I did like about the Tesla, but at the end of the day, it's still a car. The Tesla has this pickup like I've never felt before in my life. You put your foot on the gas, and it's like, have you ever been on a rock and roller coaster at Disney? You know, the rock and roller coaster, you just kind of take off 0 to 60. You really feel that. It was pretty wild. I love all the technology, and I'm a big technology guy. So it's not about, the car is a car, but if it's got cool technology, that's my thing. I kind of like that, and the ability for you to customize and make it your own. So I did like that about the Tesla, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. You just never know. Anyways, when I last left you, I talked about how we have to work on breaking old myths about retirement, and I wanted to share with you some stories that the Age Lab from MIT has put together. One of them that I shared in the earlier segment was about the fact that this myth that, well, when you retire, you're going to retire at age 65, and that's it. That's just not true anymore. Just not true. Another myth that I shared that I wanted to figure I'd add on a little bit is this idea that employers won't want to hire you when you're in your 60s because you're old. That's not true either. What I find is in the business of, certainly in my business, in financial planning, you need to earn, to be a financial planner, you should have your licenses, of course, and you should also be licensed as a certified financial planner professional, or credentialed as a certified financial planner professional. That takes a lot of studying, takes a lot of knowledge, building up that knowledge bank. But despite the fact that you might have a lot of knowledge, does not mean that you have experience. Because all that stuff that you've learned, you might know the amount of money that you can put into an IRA or into a 401k, or what the rules are surrounding required minimum distributions, or what asset allocation is, what large cap growth versus small cap growth is, why you should have certain types of insurances or estate planning protections, or how taxes work. That's all knowledge stuff. And that's all nice in theory. But you don't get really good at it until you have a collection of experiences. And the way to do that is put some of those lessons to work. And some of the best ways to do that is to be mentored by somebody who can actually take that practical knowledge, that stuff that you've learned, all that technical stuff, and apply it to something that works in real life. And then once you've had a series of these experiences, you begin to develop what's called wisdom. Wisdom comes after going through thousands of experiences. And what happens with a 65-year-old or someone that's approaching retirement, no, they may not be as technologically proficient as they might have been years ago. Technology has changed, engineering has changed, the tools we use, the software we use, that's all well and good. But what we do know is that some of the most proficient technicians and engineers are lousy at intersocial skills. They don't know how to engage someone, to build a relationship. As we get older, we realize that the experience and the ability to connect with people builds enough trust so that they're very happy to turn the technical part of what needs to happen over to somebody that will do the mechanical items. That's where you bring your greatest value. So don't ever think that at age 65 or at age 70, your employer won't want to hire you because you're too old. You bring some extraordinary experience and wisdom. You bring what I call the stickiness to the relationship. What keeps clients coming back. What keeps them involved. Another myth that's out there used to be that Florida was the best place to retire to. I refer to the east coast of Florida, and many people have, as God's waiting room. Certainly if you retire to Boca and you go to Kings Point and some of these places in Delray Beach, I mean, you're truly just saying this is going to be my last stop. Now there are other places that are emerging, other places that are growing. The West Coast has seen a great burgeoning area of retirees heading down, but you know what? Many people are saying Florida is just not for me. I want to go to other places. Some of the best places to retire to these days, Carolinas, Alabama, Tennessee, Arizona, the south coast of Texas. Now, a lot of people here in Massachusetts don't want to go to some of these other states. You know why? Because they may be red states. And they may find themselves in environments where the conversations when it comes to politics, and face it, we're in political conversations, I think, every day where you may feel uncomfortable. So that's why many people will continue to go to Florida, because Florida is one of those divided states. You can find parties for each side. But many people, I find, are going to Florida now and saying, well, I want to retire there for a little while, but I'm going to keep my place up north. Because at the end of the day, 10 years go by, and they leave Florida, and they come back home. Now, why do they come back home? For a number of reasons. Number one, of course, is medical care. Now, that's not to say that Florida doesn't have great medical care. They have plenty of medical care, and certainly they have more seniors, I think, than anybody down there, so they better find it and better have it. But Boston is where you think, if I'm going to go to the best hospitals and find the best doctors, I'm going to go to Boston. So you come back. The other thing that happens is you go to Florida with all this expectation that, oh, we'll find a place down there, I'll get to see the grandkids, they'll come down and visit, I'll get to show them off to all my friends, we'll go to Disney World, we'll go to Universal, we'll go to the beaches, we'll go to wherever. And the kids stop coming. Because the kids are too busy. In fact, they want you to go back up to see them. And in many cases, the kids don't want to spend the money to come down to Florida. And if they want to, and if you want them to come to Florida, it's going to cost you money. And you may say, okay, I don't care, because it's for the experiences and you're paying for those experiences. But I'm finding more and more and more people, especially in their 80s, are saying, Florida's just not for me anymore. It was fun for a while, but I want to be back where my kids are. And maybe your kids have relocated to St. Louis or Kansas City or Boise, Idaho. And maybe that's where you end up. But at the end of the day, it always comes back to family, doesn't it? We've asked this question many times to our clients, especially those when they're thinking about long-term planning. Let me ask you these three important questions. I want you to imagine for a moment that someone told you that you had all the money you ever wanted. You had all the money you ever wanted. What would you do with it? Just think for a minute. If you had all the money you ever wanted, what would you do with it? Now, I bet every person that's listening to that question has got visions of it. The word travel popped into your head, or maybe I'd give it away, or give it to charity, or maybe I'd give it to my kids, or maybe I'd buy a bigger house. But first of all, the big question is when you say all the money you ever wanted, how much is that money? What does that really mean? Is it twice what you have? Is it 10 times what you have? Is it 1,000,000 times what you have? I don't know. So what all the money in the world means to somebody is different for everybody. Now I want you to rethink this question. The second question. I want you to imagine that you still have all the money you ever wanted. But you go to the doctor today, and the doctor says that you are in fabulous, incredible health. But something through this genome study that we're doing tells us that somewhere between year 5 and year 10 from now, without any warning, you will just die. So you know you got 5 years of great life ahead of you, perfect health, and you got all the money you ever wanted. But then somewhere between year 5, at the start of year 6 and the end of year 10, without much notice, you will die. What would you do with your money? What would you do differently? And all of a sudden it starts to squeeze down all the things that you ever wanted to do. And maybe it is a family vacation, still goes back to that. Maybe it's setting up foundations for the kids or setting up accounts to make sure that the kids are well taken care of. But all of a sudden, it starts to really pull us back closer and closer and closer to family, though, doesn't it? As life becomes on the tail end, family becomes more and more important. We say, maybe I don't want to live in Florida anymore. Maybe I want to move back to where the kids are. Maybe I want to make sure that I understand my kids, or I get to see my kids or my grandkids or my great-grandkids doing more stuff. And then comes the last and final question. You still have all the money you ever wanted. And you go to visit the doctor today, and the doctor says, I've got some bad news for you. I don't see how you will survive the next 24 hours. At some point in the next 24 hours, you will die. So then you ask yourself, what will you regret you never did? So put that into perspective and begin to think about, what does retirement mean to you? Because would you rather be able to answer that question now with days and years and a life ahead of you, rather than feeling regretful about what you never did? And you know what ends up happening in that 24 hours when you ask that question? Many people think about not necessarily traveling somewhere, but oftentimes they think about conversations that they wish they had had with certain people. Maybe it might be an estranged child. Maybe it might be a friend that you felt just didn't end the way you wanted it to. Maybe it's I don't know, it could be anything. But it does put it all into perspective. And it's something that I think we all need to think about into what's important. Someone oftentimes refers to this story of a professor who speaks to his class at a college, and there's 300 kids sitting in this auditorium. And the professor pulls up this gigantic mason jar. And then he pulls this big crate. Remember those crates with the milk used to come in those plastic crates? And he lifts up this crate, puts it on the table next to the mason jar. And it's filled with fist-sized rocks. And he starts taking the rocks and putting them into the jar. And he says, all right, I want you to raise your hand when you agree that the jar is full. Puts fist-sized rocks into the jar. And eventually the rocks, you can't put any more rocks in, so hands go up, it must be full. Then he reaches under the table again, pulls out another jar that has stones in it. Stones that are about the size of, your thumb, or, I don't know, just inch-sized stones. And he starts sprinkling them into the jar until there's no more of those stones that can fit in. Once again, he asks the group to raise your hand once the jar is full. And then lastly, he reaches underneath and pulls out a jar full of playground sand. And he starts pouring all of those granules of sand into the jar until the sand overflows. Hands will go up again, it's full. And he says to the group, what's the lesson to be learned? What's the lesson to be learned from this story? People look at a puzzled look with him. And he says, the lesson here is that if we don't take care of the big rocks first, there's not room for everything else. Big rocks represent the big things in our life. Our family, our friends, our health. Because if we don't take care of those things, we end up finding us focusing on the granules of life. Because if you poured the sand in first, and then poured the stones in next, and the big rocks after, you've taken care of everything else except for yourself. And the lesson here is, as you're approaching retirement, those 8,000 days of retirement, and making the most of it, make sure that you're doing the very best you can for yourself, that you're taking care of your health, taking care of those that you love, having the conversations that you need, eating at the restaurants you want to eat at, and traveling to the places you want to go. Take care of those things first. Don't let all this noise of politics, of economics, of everything else drive your day. Don't let it bug you. Just relax. Enjoy the day. Take care of the big rocks first. We got to take a quick break. When we get back, let's talk about some more myths. Let's talk about the expenses people often forget when they plan for retirement. We'll be right back. You're listening to Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial on North Shore 1049.
I need a dollar, 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 that's what I need. Hey, hey. Well, I need a dollar, 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 that's what I need. Hey, hey. Said I need a dollar, 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 that's what I need. And if I share with